Begin today a new Perek, the sixth Perek of Masechta Bava Metzia. Haseicher es ha'omnen. Zok the Heilige Mishnah, Haseicher es ha'omnen, a person hired workers. And the workers that the Mishnah here in the beginning is talking about, as Taisva says, B'chlal, for this whole Perek, it's important to remember this, that there's two different types of workers. There's what's called a schir yain, a person that's hired and is being paid for his time, for the day, for the week, or even by the hour. Or then there's a kablan, a person that's hired for a certain job, to get a certain job done. And when he gets it done, it's done. Nothing to, not related to the time. So in the beginning of the Mishnah, it's talking about a person that hired workers, whether it's a schir yaim, whether it's a kablan. And then vihitu zeh ezeh. They deceived one another. So the simple pshat of the Mishnah would sound like it's saying that either the one that hired, the employer, deceived his employees, or the employees deceived the one that hired them, the employer, that one of them backed out. So then if they backed out before they began the job, ein lahem zel zeh el tarumis. There's no money that one could demand from the other. There's just complaints. That's why did you back out? Why did you fire me? But this is before the job began, so then there's only complaints. There's no money that could be demanded yet to be paid. However, sachar as a chamar, a person hires a donkey driver, or vesakador, or a person hires someone that has a wagon, that he delivers pots and things like that. Lahavi praifarin v'chalilin lekala, and he's going to deliver for him the praifarin, which are beautiful prepared wood that's used to build a nice chuppah, or also chalilin, the flutes that are going to be used for a kala, for a chasana, for a chuppah. Oil mace, or these things are being delivered, the chalilim that is being delivered for a mace by a levayan. Those times they would use chalilim, they would use flutes. Or upailin, or he hired workers lahalis pishtanim min mishre, to take out the flax from the place where it's being soaked in, that it has to be taken out at a certain point. And these are all examples of things that it's needed for a certain time. Or anything else that you hired workers for a specific job that has to be done, that if it's not going to be done now, so then you're going to have a loss here. And then these workers backed out. They started already some of the work, and they backed out. The Chazr ben over here is even before they started the work, but they backed out, and now they cause you a loss. So Makaim she'ein sham adam, in a place. Just a second, Rashi over here. I'm just saying that Rashi says v'chazr behen. No, okay, the v'chazr behen goes on later. Okay, so yeah, they backed out. I think over here it means even before they started the job, and they backed out. But the fact that they backed out now is so you're not going to have the work that you need for a specific time. Makim she'ein sham adam. So if the employer he can't find any other person now to do this work for him. Seicher aleyen. So what he could do is he can deduct from what he would pay them. He'll have them start doing the work for him, and then he's going to deduct from what he would pay them to hire someone else for cheaper, because for the price that he would pay for them, he can't find anybody else to do the work. So he has to hire someone else and now deduct from their pay, from the first workers. Oy maton, or he could deceive now these first workers that backed out on him. We'll see in the Gemara. The Gemara will explain exactly how it deceives them. And this is all because of the fact that it's a davara of it. So in this case, the workers caused them a loss. So therefore, the workers have to now take this loss if the employer can't find someone else.
What's the seicher alein?
Seicher alein means that he's going to deduct from their pay in order to be able to pay someone else.
Didn't do anything.
Okay, so if he wants to be able to deduct, so he's going to have them start doing the job. He's going to tell them, start doing the job for me a little bit, and then he'll be able to get someone else to do the rest of the work, and he's not going to pay the workers before for the beginning of the work, and then he's going to pay less for someone else. A person hires workers to do a job, and over here, these workers that we're talking about are the kablanim, the workers that are hired to do a job. They're not being paid by the hour. They're hired for a specific job to get done. V'chazru behem. And now they started doing the job, and middle of the job, they left half done, and they backed out in the middle. So yadam ala tachtaina. If they're the ones that backed out of the job, so then they're going to have the lower hand, meaning they're going to be at a disadvantage. If the employer now has to go and find someone else, to hire someone else, and now the price to hire other workers went up, so then they're going to have the loss. We're going to deduct from their pay in order for him to be able to hire someone else. They're not going to get their full pay. Yodam ala tachtaina. If it's the balabas, the one that backed out from the job, in the middle of the job, he tells them, I don't need you anymore, and he fires them, then yodai ala tachtaina. Then the balabas that fired them is going to have the lower hand. He's going to be at a disadvantage. And Rashi here says what that even means is that, well, whatever they did, they're going to have to get paid for exactly the amount that he promised them they're going to get paid. Now, how about if the price now of hiring workers went down? So now when the balabas is going to hire other workers, he's going to pay cheaper for the other workers. So now why is the balabas doing this? He's doing it because the price of workers went down, so now he wants to pay cheaper. No, yodel atachtaina. He's going to have to pay the workers that he just hired, and he's going to have to give them the full pay, and even more than he promised to pay them, besides the cheaper pay that he's now paying the other workers. So these workers that were now fired end up gaining because he's hiring other workers that are cheaper. They actually gain. They get the difference of this cheaper pay. And the reason for this is, as the Rishayim explained, because what happens now with these workers? They're going to have to go and find another job. And the other job they're going to find, they're going to get paid less. So the balabas has to make up for them that difference, that they're going to get paid less. So therefore he pays for them more for even than what he promised them l'chatchila. That's how Rashi explains over here. Now, another halacha the Mishnah says, Kol ha-mishana, any worker that changes from the work that he was told to do. So the example Rashi gives is, a person was given wool to dye it red, and instead he dyes it black. He didn't do the job with the way what he was told to do. Yadai ala tachtaina. So the worker is also at a disadvantage in the pay that he gets paid. So Rashi explains, what does the yadai ala tachtaina mean here? You can pay the worker in two ways. You look at the expenses that he spent on the dye that he invested to do the work. What is it? What did the hitzah, that is? What did it cost? Or you can pay them for the shvach, which means this wool now, after you dyed it, it's worth more. So what do you pay? Do you pay for what they spent, or do you pay for what it improved? So yadei la tachtaina, in a case where they did not exactly what the balabas told them, so if the shvach is less than the hitzah, that's what you pay. If what it got improved is less, they get paid for that. If what they spent is less, that's what they get paid. That's the disadvantage when a person does not do what the balabas told him. Another halacha the Mishnah says, anybody that backs out, that retracts from an agreement that was made, yadai ala tachtaina. He's at a disadvantage. Seems to be just a repetition. The Gemara will explain a few pshatim what this last statement in the Mishnah is coming to say. Okay, the Gemara begins with the first halacha of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah said, a person hired workers and vehitu zeh ezeh. They deceived one another. So the Gemara is medayik. What is this term of they deceived one another? The Mishnah does not use the term that they retracted, that one backed out on the other. That would be the proper expression when you're talking about an employer and employees. He hires them and they had an agreement, and then one of them backed out of the agreement. Whether the balabas backed out, whether the workers backed out. What's this lashon that they deceived one another? What's the deception over here? Elehitu zeh. The Mishnah uses the term that they deceived one another. So what is it mashma from the language of the Mishnah? The atu poile mahadadi. What the Mishnah is saying is, a person hired workers, vihitu zeh ezeh. These workers, they didn't have an agreement between one another that one is backing out from the agreement. No, these workers deceived one another. That's what it seems like the Mishnah is saying. So what are we talking about over here? Hey chidami, what's the case over here? The amalei balabayis. So the case over here would be as follows. You have one of these workers. So the Balabayas approached him and said to him, Zil oigeli pailim, go and hire for me other workers to come and work for me. And now this person that the Balabas asked him to hire workers for him, he went and he deceived those people that he went to hire for the Balabas. That's the hittu zeh of the Mishnah. So the Gemara is going to spell out exactly what did he deceive them with. Hey chidami, what happened over here? If the balabas says, I'm ready to pay for the work that they're going to do. And this person that the balabas asks to go and hire, so he says to the workers, Bitlasa, the balabas is only ready to pay you 3. And on this, the Mishnah says, now the workers find out that the balabas really was ready to pay 4. and they agreed for 3. So they're upset. Why were they told less than what the balabas was ready to pay? And the Mishnah said that there's tarumas. They can't demand any more, but they have complaints. But the Gemara asked, tarumas maya vidite. Why should there be any complaint there? Savor v'kibul. They heard. They were told that the balabas will only pay 3, and they accepted that. So if they accepted, they accepted. What kind of tinus could they have? So that can't be the case. No. If we're going to say that what happened was the opposite, if the balabas says, I'm only ready to pay the workers 3. This one worker that the balabas told him to hire, he went and he said to them, Barba, the balabas is going to pay you 4, more than what the balabas actually was ready to pay. So now what happened over here? Hey Chidami, what's the case? If this one that's telling them, that's hiring them, and he says the balabas is going to pay 4, if he told them, I take responsibility that you're going to get paid this money, this 4. So if that's the case, so then he should have to give them the difference. The balabas says he was only ready to give 3, and he said 4. He should have to make sure that they get 4. Where do we see this? The Tanya, as we learned in Abraisa, you hire a worker to come and do work. You tell the worker, I'm hiring you to do work in my property. But then you bring him and you show him a property that he's going to work in your friend's property. Who's the one responsible not to pay? The worker, after he's done, comes to the person that hired him and he says, oh, sorry, the work wasn't done by me. The work was done on that guy's property. Go demand the money from him. It doesn't work like that. The one that hired him is the one that has to give him the full pay. You're the one that hired them, even though the work was done for someone else. You hired, you have to pay. And then the one that hired them will go, and now you have to go to the balabas who the work was done for and get reimbursed. But it's your responsibility. What the hana that the balabas gave you. But it's your responsibility to pay if you're the one that hired them. So over here the same thing. If the balabas says he's ready to pay 3, and when you hire the workers, you tell them you're going to get paid 4. It's going to be your responsibility to pay them 4. If you told them clearly, it's tzchar chamalai, I'm going to take care of you. Says the Gemara, so the only way to explain this, we only need the Mishnah here to say like as follows. He told the workers, that the balabas is the one that's going to take care of you. So again, the balabas said he's only paying 3. They said we're paying 4. And the one that hired them told them the balabas is the one that's going to be paying you. It's his responsibility. So now the Gemara goes further and asks, well, what's going on over here? What is the going rate for the workers that are hired? Let's see what the going rate over here is. If the going rate is 3, so then the balabas said he's only ready to pay 3, so they should get paid 3. If the going rate is 4, so then you should get paid 4. And so the Gemara, so we only need the Mishnah to teach what it said, that they have complaints. They can't demand more money, but they have complaints. The case is as follows. The Ikke, the Meiger, or the Bach says, the Mizger Barba. There are those that are hired for 4. The Ikke, the Mizger Betlasa. But there are those that are ready to be hired for a cheaper price for 3. So there's no one going rate. There's both. Some hired like this and some that are hired like this. The Amrulei, so now these workers that were hired there will tell this person that told them that they're going to get 4. Ilav the Amruslam Barba. If not for the fact that you told us that the balabas was ready to pay 4, we would have made an effort and found somebody that's ready to pay 4, because there are people that are ready to pay 4. So therefore, we can't demand to get paid more than 3, because 3 is also the going rate in the market. People get paid for this. So the balabas only said 3, so we're only going to get 3 now. But they have tarumas though. Why did you tell us 4? If we would have known that he's only ready to pay 3, we would try to find an employer that was ready to pay 4. That's the tarumas of our Mishnah. Or another pshat is hacha b'balabayis askinon. Over here, these workers that are being hired, they themselves are property owners. They have their own place to do their work in their own property. So over here, the fact that they're ready to be hired out is only if they're getting paid more. The Amrulei, they say it to the person that hired them, Ilav, the Amislam Barba, if not for the fact that you told us that we're getting paid for, have a zila b'milsa lasguri. It's beneath our dignity to go and get hired just for 3. We're really our own property owners. LMI, we thought that there's an opportunity to get a high pay, that some people could get paid, so we were ready for it. But again, there's only tarumas here, because the rate of 3 is still a proper rate that workers get paid, and therefore the balabas only said 3. They can't demand more than that rate, the going rate that there is. Another pshat we could say in our Mishnah, or we could really go back to the pshat that we said before, La'olam b'payel maskinon. We're talking about regular workers, not like the Gemara just said, that these workers here are themselves balabatim, and therefore they're expecting more. The Amri Lei, so why do they have tarumis? Why do they have tainus if the going rate is 4? And the Mefarshim say, now according to this teretz, we don't have to say that the going rate is either 3 or 4. Even if the going rate is dafke 3, but nevertheless, the Amri Lei, even the Amris Lombar Ba, you told us that we're going to get paid 4. So therefore, we did a much higher quality of work because we thought we're getting paid more than the going rate, and so we worked harder. We did a better work. And so therefore, they have tainus. Why did you tell us higher than the going rate? And therefore, we invested more effort. So the Gemara asks, if that's the case, they did a higher quality of work. Let's see the work that they actually did. And if they actually did a higher quality of work, so they should get paid more than the going rate. Why is it only tarumis? Why do they now only have complaints? They deserve to get more. And says the Gemara berifke. The work that they're doing is to dig ditches around a property, and this is a kind of work that you can't see the quality of the work, whether it's actually better. So they don't have any ability to demand more for the quality of the work that they did. Fragt the Gemara, why not? Rivke nami made the yoda. You see the ditches that they dug around the property. Can't you tell and see if this work was done better, a higher quality? And so the Gemara, no, you can't see because the malimaya. Now it's filled with water already, and you can't see the quality of the job. V'lo yediyah, it's unknown. So therefore, they don't have the ability to demand more than the going rate of 3. And they're claiming that we really did a better quality work because we were promised 4. So they only have tarumis. They're not going to be able to get paid more though. Another pshat, the Gemara goes back to the original svara that it said before. The case here is like the Gemara began, the opposite, that the balabas was ready to pay 4. The one that went to hire these workers said that the balabas is only ready to pay 3. The Gemara asked on this pshat, if so, that what kind of complaints do they have? They heard that the balabas is only ready to pay 3, and they were ready to accept this, so they accepted it. Answer is, the Amrulay, they say to this person that hired them, Leslach, do you not hold of what the pasuk says, Al Timna, Toiv Mibalov, don't withhold good from the one that is the owner of this, the one that it comes to him, this good. If the balabas said that he's ready to pay 4, why would you lower the price? Why did you say that he's only going to pay us 3? So because of you, we had a loss for no reason. So therefore, they have tainus to him that he offered to pay less, and therefore the taka going to get less. Well, that's their tainus. Okay, the Gemara here now goes off on a side point. Since we mentioned over here this situation where you have the balabas that was ready to pay one amount, and the one that the balabas sent as a shliach to hire them said a different amount. So the Gemara here is going to discuss another kind of a case in relation to this. Pshita, now the following would be a pasha to halacha i'amale balabayis betlosa. If the balabas says to someone that he says, go hire for me workers, and the balabas tells him, I'm ready to pay 3. This person now that the balabas sends to hire goes and tells the workers, and amal lehayim, he tells them, barba, the balabas is ready to pay 4. And now the workers respond and they say that we are ready to work. We're ready to work on the terms that the balabas said, that the employer said. What do they mean by this? What do they mean, kamay shama balabayis? It's pashut that what they meant is iluya. They meant a higher price that they actually heard from the one that was hiring them. Even though the balabas be'emes said that he's only ready to give 3, but what do they mean to say? What they meant to say is that we trust you. We trust you when you told us 4 that the balabas taka said 4, and therefore they're only ready to work for 4, and that's what they could demand after they do their work. But Ella, the question though will be if the case is in the reverse. If the balabas comes and says that I'm ready to pay 4, and now the person that was sent to go and hire them, what does he tell the workers? That the balabas is only ready to pay you 3. And what did the workers respond? And they said, we're ready to work like the balabas said. So what is the halach over here in this case? What do they mean by this? Do we say adid bure didei kasamchi? When they say kamoisha ama balabayas, they're relying on what the balabas, what they told him. They told him 3. Right? So they are trusting him. When they're saying, they're saying, we're trusting you that the balabas said 3, and therefore we're ready to be hired for 3. Or maybe the reason why they're telling him that we rely on what the balabas said is because they're actually suspicious. He's saying only 3. We're not sure if the balabas was ready to pay only 3, or maybe the balabas was ready to pay even more than 3. Maybe he was ready to pay 4. So therefore, when they hear he said this cheaper price of 3, the reason they're saying, like the balabas said, is because they mean to clarify, if the balabas said 4, we want it to be like what the balabas said, which is 4, not like what you said, which is only 3. That's the shaila over here. So the shaila comes up in a case where the one hiring them told them less than what the balabas said. Who are they relying on? Are they relying on the words of this shliach that's hiring them, or are they hiring on the balabas? Are they relying on what the balabas said, that he's ready to pay even more, which is 4? So the Gemara brings a raya for this Tashema from the following halacha that it says regarding a get. So, but regarding a get, there's also the halachas of a shliach. A person can bring a shliach, be a shliach, that is, to deliver a get for a isha. So the Gemara here is going to be based on the fact that there's 2 types of shluchim for a get. There's a shliach lekabbalah. What that means is a woman that appoints a shliach. So now, as soon as the get comes into the hands of this shliach, he receives the get in the place of the woman, and she's divorced immediately. And then there's a shliach lo ilacha, where the man appoints the shliach to deliver the get to the isha, and she's only divorced when the get arrives into the hands of the isha. Okay, so now let's see what happened here. What happens if the isha tells a man, "Havali giti, I want you to go to my husband and tell him that he should appoint you to be a shliach to deliver the get to me." So she did not appoint him to be a shliach lekabbalah. She tells him to be a shliach lo ilacha, that the husband will appoint you to deliver the get to me. And until I don't get the get, I'm not divorced. And now, what does the shliach do? The shliach comes to the husband and says, "V'ishtecha amra, your wife told me hiskabeli giti. She appointed me to be a shliach lekabbalah, that as soon as I get the get into my hands, I receive it in her place, and she's divorced right away." And now, what did the husband say? V'hu aimer. The husband says to the shliach, "Heilach kamoisha amra. Here, take the get, and you should be a shliach like she said." What's the halacha here? What is like she said? What did the husband mean to say by this? Is the husband relying on what she actually said, that now he has to deliver it to her? Or did the husband rely on what the shliach told the husband, that he's a shliach lekabbalah? So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua, Amar Rav. So in the name of Rav about this, that afile higia get liyada eina mugareshes. Even if the get reaches the hands of the isha, she's not going to be divorced. What's the reason? Because the isha never appointed him as a shliach lekabbalah. On the other hand, the husband heard from the shliach that he says to him that I am appointed as a shliach lekabbalah. So the husband never appointed him to be a shliach le'alacha either. Comes out, he's not a shliach lekabbalah because the isha never appointed him to be a shliach lekabbalah. He's not a shliach le'alacha because the husband never appointed him to be a shliach le'alacha to deliver the get to the isha. So he's not a shliach b'chlal, so she'll never be divorced. Gemara spells it out. So what do you see from here? Shamet mino. So from this we could learn out adibura didei kasamach. When the husband hears the word of this shliach, and the shliach said to the husband that I was hired by the isha, or I was appointed by the isha to be a shliach lekabbalah. The husband is actually relying on that, and therefore the husband never appointed him to be a shliach lehoilacha to bring the get to the isha, and therefore she'll never be divorced. If you're going to say that when the husband hears what the shliach says, and then the husband responds and says, you should be a shliach like she said, what he means to say, like she actually said. He's actually clarifying that I'm not sure if what you're saying is right. I want it to be like she actually said, that I'm appointing you a shliach lahilacha. When you should deliver it to her. If so, when the shliach delivers the get through her hands, at that point she should be divorced, because he's relying on what the isha said, that you bring the get to the isha, and at that point she is divorced. So over here you see, we can be placed at the ibaya that we had before, that when a person hears, in this case, when the husband hears from the shliach, he's relying on what the shliach says. The same thing also when people are being hired by someone that the balabas sent as a shliach, the workers are relying on the words that the shliach actually said. They're not relying on what the balabas actually said. Ravashi, so Ravashi answers, no, there's no raya from here. In fact,
Right?
Why?
Whatever she said.
No. Over here, what do we say? By the Baal and the Isha, because the Isha said she should be a shliach lekabbalah, and the Baal said she should be a shliach lahilacha, but she can't. The Baal again. Let me start over again. The Isha said that he should be a shliach lahilacha, right? And the shliach comes and says that the Isha told me to be a shliach lekabbalah, and it's not true. So if we're going to say that the Baal is relying on what the shliach said, there should be a shliach lekabbalah, and he only appointed the shliach because he thought that he's a shliach lekabbalah, but he's not a shliach lekabbalah. Kumtais, he's not a shliach lahilacha. He never intended to appoint him as a shliach lahilacha. And he never appointed him as a shliach lekabbalah either. He can't appoint him as a shliach lekabbalah. And the Isha never appointed him to be a shliach lekabbalah either. So there's no get b'chlal.
He said whatever the Isha said. So.
What does that mean? What that means is what he heard from the shliach. That's what it means. That's what the Gemara is proving here now. Amar Ravashi. So Ravashi answers, no, there's no raya from here. Ravashi answers that in this case there's a different reason why she won't be divorced at all. How could you compare to our case? And explains like this. There would be, yes, it would be true. It would be a good raya from what Rav said. If the story was the opposite, then the raya you're bringing from here would be a perfect raya. And the Gemara spells it out. If the case was hiskabel li giti, that the Isha tells this shliach, you are going to be my shliach lekabbalah. She did appoint him that as soon as you get the get into your hands, I'm going to be divorced. And now the shliach came to the husband and said, "V'ishtacha amra." He says to the husband, "Your wife told me havali giti, that I have to deliver the get to her, that you should appoint me as a shliach lahilacha, and only when the get comes to her hands, then she should be divorced." And then what happened? The husband says, "Haylach kamaisha amra. I'm giving you the get like what she said." And on this, if on this it would be said in the name of Rav, that get as soon as the shliach gets the get into his hands, she would be divorced. Then what could I prove from this? From here I would see that the husband is relying on what she actually said. She said that you should be my shliach lekabbalah. So even though the shliach told the husband that she told me that I'm going to be a shliach lahilacha, but if the husband said, I want it to be like my wife said, what that means is that she should be divorced right away as a shliach lekabbalah. So that would be a proof that that he meant to say, I'm relying on her, on the Isha. Inami, or if in this case the halacha would be that only when the get is actually delivered into her hands, then she'll be divorced. Then you could also say that we can prove from here, I see from this, that that the husband is relying on what the shliach is saying. Even though the Isha said that I'm appointing you as a shliach lekabbalah, there's no need for you to deliver the get to me. But the shliach told the husband that you have to appoint me as a shliach lahilacha. So the husband did that. He has the power to do that. He appointed him as a shliach lahilacha, and then the Isha would be megareshes when the get comes into the hands of the Isha. So that would also be a proof that we say that the husband is relying on what the shliach said. But in the case that we had before, when the Isha tells the shliach, I want you to be appointed by the husband as a shliach lahilacha. You should deliver the get to me. And then what was the shliach doing? The shliach comes and says to the husband, no, I'm a shliach lekabbalah. I can receive the get right here. I don't have to go all the way back to the Isha for her to be divorced. I can receive the get right here. Over here, what's happening? Mishum da'okar shliach lishlichusei legamri. Over here, what's happening is the shliach uprooted his shlichus. Because the Amalei, what he's basically saying to the husband is, Shliach lekabbalah havina. I'm only ready to be a shliach lekabbalah. Lahilacha lehavina. I'm not ready to be a shliach lahilacha. A shliach lekabbalah is much easier, much simpler. He gets the get right here. He doesn't have to bring the get to the Isha. She's divorced right away, and then he could send someone else with a message to her that she's divorced. A shliach lahilacha, he has to schlep all the way back to the Isha to bring her the get. Why was the shliach changing from what the Isha told him? The shliach told him, I want you to be appointed by the husband to be a shliach lahilacha. She comes and tells the husband, no, I was appointed to be a shliach lekabbalah, and I don't have to go back to your wife. I can accept the get right here and she'll be divorced. Why? Because what he's expressing with that is that he's not ready to be a shliach lahilacha. So even if he later takes the get and he brings it to the Isha, and he does make it back to the Isha, she's not going to be divorced because he made it clear that he's not interested in going back to her. So over here, the question doesn't revolve around the kavana of the Baal, what he meant to say when he said, "Hey, look, kamaisha amra." Over here, we see the intention of the shliach himself, that the shliach himself was not interested in being a shliach lahalacha. So therefore, he's not a shliach. He won't be megadeshes. So there's no raya to the case that we were talking about before when there was a shaila. A person that hired, and he said, let it be like the balabas said, whether he means taka like the balabas said, or does he mean that he's relying on what the shliach said, that you'll be paid, and not like the balabas said. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the original discussion here regarding our Mishnah, the lashon of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that they deceived one another. Why doesn't the Mishnah use the term of a chazru? If we're talking about the employer and the employee, the balabas and the umnin, so they had already an agreement, and then the right lashon would be that they backed out. Chazru. Why is it using a term that they deceived one another? So the Gemara says, or I could answer you a different pshat, not like what we said before. Before the Gemara said it means that the workers deceived one another because there was one that was sent to hire the others, and then he didn't tell them like the Balabas said. But now the Gemara goes back to the simple pshat of the Mishnah. Hi Tana, the Tana of this Mishnah, Chazru nami hitu karele. That when it says in the Mishnah hitu, it means the same as Chazru. Deceived over here means that one backed out from the agreement. And the Gemara brings a raya from a braise where we see the braise uses the same term as hitu, and it spells out beferish that it means that one of them backed out. The Tanya, as we learned in a braise, and here this is a lengthy braise that goes through a lot of different details regarding this halacha of employer and employee, and one of them backed out. So the Braisa says like this: a person hired workers vehitu as balabayas, and the workers deceived the balabas. Oy balabayas hit oisan, or the balabas deceived them. Elam zel ze elatarumis. All they have is complaints on one another. If before the job began, one of them backed out, as we'll see here, the Mishnah, the Braisa will spell out, then there's no money claims here, just complaints. When is this the case that if they backed out from the job? There's only complaints, but no money claim. Shaloi halchu. If they didn't yet go and to begin to do the job. Aval halchu chamarim. If this is donkey drivers that they went to that location to go and do the job. And v'lei matzu tvuah. And they didn't find the grain that they were told that they have to take. Or pailin, these were workers that were hired. They were hired to go and water the field, and they see it's all already been watered, and there's no job for them to be done. So then, so because they had already gone, they already went there, and after they went, then the balabas says, forget it, I don't need your work now. Or they see that there's no work to be done for them, they were hired for nothing, the balabas has to pay them fully. Now, what does it mean fully? You can't compare the full pay for a person that is actually schlepping and doing the job to someone that comes back empty and does not have to do the job. Or someone that's actually doing the work of watering the field, for someone that's not. So they get the full pay of how much someone would be ready to be paid for not doing this, not working hard, just yeshiv batel. How much is the value of that kind of work for that time, for that day? That's what they get paid. Huh? Well, they didn't actually work though. The balabas hired them for a certain amount, but if you do the actual work, it's worth more than if you don't do the work. How much would a person be ready to be paid less when you're there and you don't actually do the job? That's the mishalim. This is talking about, till here the Brais is talking about workers that were hired and they went and they saw there's nothing for them to do there in the time, but it's talking about also a schir yai, a person that was hired for his time. But now the Brais continues and says the halacha is b'nigeya to someone that is hired as a kabla, that he's hired for a job. And what's going to be the halacha here regarding the case where the balabas retracts or the workers retract? When do we say that they have to get paid fully if they did not start their work yet? But if they began their work already, again, let me just correct that. That if they had charote, then it said that they only have tarumas, and that there's no money claim over here, that there's only complaints. That's if they didn't begin their work yet, and they have a job to be done. And before the whole job began, they say, forget about it, this job is not for us, and they backed out. Okay, avol is chilu b'malacha, but if they began their job already, so then shamalem mashasu. So again, we're talking here about a kablon that has a certain job, and they did half of the job, and then they back out. So we see what is it that they actually did, and they have to get paid in full for the part of the job that they did already. So Ketzad, what does this mean? Kiblu kamaliktzar b'shnei slaim. They were hired for the harvest to cut the wheat, and they're being hired for 2 slaim. Katzru chetzia. They did half of the job, v'yinichu chetzia, and they left the other half. They backed out a middle. Or beged lerek. They were hired to weave a garment, and b'shnei slaim, and they're being paid 2 slaim. And orge chetzia, they did half of the job, v'yinichu chetzia, and they left the other half. Shamin lehen es masha osu. We evaluate the part of the job that they did, and they get paid in full for the part of the job that they did. And the chiddush of the Tana of this Braisa over here is that we don't say Yadam ala Tachtaina. We're not going to say because they backed out, they're going to be to a disadvantage if now the Balabas has to hire another worker to finish the job. And now the rate of hiring a worker went up. So that these workers that did half of the job are not going to lose out from this. As the Braisa spells out, Hoya Yafa Shisha Dinarim, if now to hire another worker is to do just half of the job is going to be 6 dinarim, which is more, an extra 2 dinar than it was before, because 2 slayim is 8 dinarim. So if they did half of the job, to do the other half of the job should only be 4 dinarim, but now it's worth 6 dinarim. So the balabas is losing out 2 dinarim for this. So maybe who should take the loss? These workers that backed out in the middle. Yadam ala tachtaina. No, the Tana Kama of this Braisa holds Naisan Lahem Sela. They get 1 sela, which was for half of the job, which is 4 dinarim. They get the full pay for what they actually did. Or they could finish their job, and then they get paid 2 slaim. V'im sela, if to hire now another worker to do the remainder of the job is worth a sela like it was before, so then naisalem sela. These workers that did half of the job will get paid a sela. The Gemara will later explain what's the chiddush and what the Braisa is saying here. It seems to be obvious. It's this last point there. That's the Tanakama. So again, the point of the Tanakama is even though the workers back out, they still get paid in full for what they did, even though the balabas ends up losing out from this. Abdaisa says no. Abdaisa always like the Tana of our Mishnah that in such a case we say Yadam ala Tachtaina, and therefore Shaman lehem asha asad lehe ases. We have to now see they left half of the job undone. So we have to look in the future. What's the rate now to get the job done? So therefore, if it's worth now to hire another worker to finish the job 6. So Naisalem shekel. So now they're going to take half of the pay of what they got paid. A shekel is half of the sela. So they're not going to get their full pay. They're going to have to lose those 2 dinarim that the balabas is not going to lose out from that. They're going to lose out from it. Yadam ala tachtaina, because they backed out. Oi, now Abdaisa says the same thing like the Tanakama. Or Yigmuru Malachtam, let them finish their job, V'yitlush nei slime, and they'll take the full pay of 2 slime. And Vim Sela, if they did half of the job and now to hire another worker is only worth a sela, it's the same rate, Naisalem Sela, so they get paid the full sela for the part of the job that they did. Again, the Gemara will explain what the chiddush in this is. When was all this said? When there's a job here that they backed out in the middle, and because they backed out, there's no loss here for the balabas, he can find someone else to do the job. If we're talking about a situation where they backed out in the middle of the job, and there's no one else the balabas could find to hire, it's very hard to find someone to hire for this job. So then what does he do? He could hire someone else and promise someone else a higher price, and it's going to go off of their pay, of these workers that backed out in the middle. Oy maton. Or he could deceive these workers that are backing out in the middle of the job. What does it mean? Keitzad maton. How does he deceive these workers that are backing out in the middle? And he tells them, listen, I set with you the price that I'm going to pay you a sela for this half a job that you did now. And now there's the other half that's left, that's also worth only a sela. Continue, finish the work for me. I'll pay you double than what I told you in the beginning. And then in the end, he's not obligated to pay them more than what he originally promised them. How much could he deceive them? To promise them even up to 40 or 50 zuz. The Gemara is going to explain exactly this year, what exactly this means, how much you can promise them to deceive them to continue doing the job. The last point the Braisa finishes off with, when do we say that he's able to deceive them that he's able to hire another worker and take off from their pay if there's no other worker to be hired for the same rate. But if there is other workers that are there that you could hire, and the workers that backed out, or the other gears here is they say to the employer, they say to him, go, you have other people you could hire. So easy to find someone else to hire in our place. So then, in such a case where he could just hire someone else in their place, so then there's only complaints. Because he's not going to lose anything, and he can hire someone else in their place. He's going to have to pay them for what they did, and then he hires another worker in their place. There's a lot of details in this brisa that seems to be extra, needs to be clarified. Yeah, the Gemara is going to explain everything. The Gemara is going to explain all the details here. That's the whole next Amud of here. The Gemara is going to explain. But the Gemara brought this brisa be'ikr for the first point here that you see it uses the term of hitu. And the term hitu does not mean that the workers deceived each other, but the term hitu means that the workers backed out from the job from the balabas, so the balabas was the one that backed out. So that's the pshat in our Mishnah as well.